This video has been made possible by BENQ. If you're a digital artist in need of a professional monitor, then check out the link below.
Welcome back to part 2. Today we are going to model the engine housing. So let's start out by beveling the edge loops and Control-Shift-clicking the main mesh. Delete the hidden polys, go into solo mode and delete the front and back parts of the mesh. Turn on symmetry and bevel the top corners. Click to repeat the last operation. Switch to Insert Multiple Edge Loops with Interactive Elevation for your modifier. Add in the number of edge loops and the height you want. Go ahead and bevel the bottom corners as well. Auto group and Control-Shift-Click the last mesh, then split hidden. Remove unnecessary edges and bridge the edges together. Setting polygon to do nothing in the Zmodeler brush will help with those hard to select edges. Turning on double-sided will also help you select the edges. That is located in the tool palette under display properties. Once you're finished bridging, go to the tool palette and in geometry under crease subpalette you'll find the bevel width slider. When you control click on that slider, it will give you a nice bevel around your polygroups. Then take your Zmodeler brush and give it a nice rounded bevel with Insert Multiple Edge Loops. Click Crease PG, Mirror Weld and press D to activate dynamic subdivisions. Add edge loops to control the fall off of the corners. I like to slide the edge loop all the way up until it's a sharp crease, and then pull it back a little until the crease is gone. Since this is the same size as the middle part of the engine housing, we can duplicate the subtool and mirror and weld in the Z-axis, making sure local symmetry is turned on. You can find that in the Transform palette. Delete the edge loop and position it in place. With the last piece, we will bevel the horizontal edge and delete it. Let's get out of solo mode and bring up the gizmo. Click on Transpose all selected subtools, which is the last icon in the gear. Then Control-Shift-Drag all the subtools that are related to the engine housing. Go to the Subtool palette and click New Folder. All the subtools selected through the gizmo will be placed in that new folder. Control-Shift-Drag on the canvas to unselect everything and turn off Transpose all selected subtools. Now we can turn off all the eyeballs for the subtools and work within the folder. Click on the bottom subtool and hover over a polygon. We want bridge connected polys as a circle with modifiers of polygroup flat and triangle sides. Group by normals and crease PG. Turn on dynamic and add an edge loop to tighten up the form. Adjust the smooth subdivision slider to 5 and the crease level to 4 to give it a nice beveled look. Going back to our last major piece, let's auto group and split groups located in the Subtool palette. Q-mesh all polygons and crease PG. Add those edge loops to control the corner. For the bottom panels, we will Q-mesh them out, turn on dynamic, and this time we will slide the Q grid up to 3 and adjust the coverage. Select the subtool above and mask it. Turn on the gizmo and bring in a poly cube. Split mask points, scale it down, and delete loops. Move the cube out from the other subtools. Alt-click the back of the cube. This way we have an idea of how far back we can move it. Center the gizmo, turn off local symmetry, and mirror and weld the cube. Start scaling and moving the model into place. Control-Alt drag over the bottom poly and Control move the gizmo to extrude the face. Then extrude the 2 side polys with the Zmodeler brush. We have to scale in the back because the bottom panels come out at an angle. Grab the slice rectangle brush and slice the bottom. Then Q-mesh those 2 polys all the way back. Turn on dynamic and move the Q grid slider to 3, then adjust the coverage for a nice rounded edge. There are a few ways to create beveled metal plates. The method I prefer is with a cylinder. Select the rear by Alt-clicking on it and then mask it. Turn on the gizmo and bring in a cylinder. Adjust the cylinder H divides to 32, split the mask points. Rotate and scale it into place. Select the gear on the gizmo and pick Extender. Use the orange cones to extend the cylinder out. Go back to the gear and press Accept. To get the results I'm looking for, I'll run a back-to-back extender. It all depends on how tight you want the corners to be. Accept it a second time and move it into place. Once positioned, you can delete the extra edge loops with the Zmodeler brush. Another use for the extender is to create handles. Grab a Ring 3D and adjust the divides and radius. Go to solo mode and delete half the ring. Center the gizmo and pick extender. Move the orange cone and you will have a handle. Remember to click accept when you're finished. Depending on the size, you may have to run extender again, or you can mask off half and move it up. If you're not happy with the bend of the handle, we can fix that with the Zmodeler brush. First, Control-click the bottom poly group to mask out the main handle, and Control-drag to extrude, just to make sure the end is straight. Continue to delete the polys that make up the bend. Then hover over an edge and pick Bridge. 2 holes and small rounded corners as the target. Click and drag to create the bridge. You could Q-mesh a poly loop at the base. I decided to remove them later on. The QC50 button I pressed on my UI is a quick crease with an angle tolerance. So it creases my object based on a 50-degree angle, turns on dynamic subdivisions, and sets the smooth subdivisions to 4. It is from a free plugin that was made by Joseph Drust called Drust Tools. It's a very useful plugin. Since we're on the subject of plugins, another one you might recognize that is scattered all over my UI is called Ryan's Tools. It's an excellent plugin that is consistently being updated. Now that we have the handles and plates in place, let's mirror and weld them. Alt-click on the rear and mask it. Bring in a polycube from the gizmo. Split mask points and delete loops. Scale and position the top and the bottom cubes. For the sides, let's delete the top, middle, and bottom polys. Then bevel the edges. Press Ctrl W to polygroup it, and then Q-mesh all polygons. Group by normals, crease PG, and turn on dynamic. Add an edge loop right down the middle and 3 of them running horizontally. Hover over a point and select Split. Looks like it might be a little too long. It's better to make that adjustment before punching in the holes. So start splitting the points and make sure you get the back as well. Click to repeat. Q-mesh polygroup all to Q-mesh them all at once, and delete the edge loops in the middle. Once it's finished, you can mirror and weld it over. Take some time and tweak the position. This model will have a lot of dynamic subdivisions and Q grids, which can be deceiving for the poly count. It may say 1 million polys, but when you send it to KeyShot with the bridge, ZBrush will apply all those dynamic subdivisions to real subdivisions. So you may have to go back and lower dynamic smooth divisions or the Q grids before sending. KeyShot has a cool rounded corners feature, so you can turn off dynamic on some pieces and have KeyShot round the edges. It will depend on the shape of your object and how the textures from substance is reacting to it. Another strategy is to model with dynamic off. Build the edges in to capture the form, then when you send it to KeyShot, you can smooth the normals by an angle and have a much lower poly count. Before adding the polycube, Alt-click on the mesh to match the gizmo to the object. That way, when the polycube comes in, it will be in the right orientation. So when a mesh is at an angle, you can rotate the canvas to help select it with the Select Rectangle brush. All you have to do is hold down Shift, then press on the canvas with the pen, still with the pen on the tablet, release Shift and the canvas will rotate. The model will not be moved, only the canvas. Now that the plane is in position, select Insert Multiple Edge Loops with the modifier of Alternate Polygroups. Then in Polygon Action, bevel Polygroup All. Next, Q-mesh Polygroup All and hold Shift to activate the Move feature. Then bevel all polygons. press Ctrl W to make it one polygroup, group by normals, crease PG, turn on dynamic, Finally, let's adjust the hole positions. This piece, we will create the wire mesh and key shot using an opacity map and a bump. You can do the same thing in ZBrush using noise and an alpha in the surface subpalette. Just make sure the mesh is UV'd for the best results. Modeling vents. So for this video, I'm going to model the top row of vents to save some time. If you're going to make vents, make sure you do all of them at once per subtool, because going back and adding more in is just a pain. Start out by setting up the vent placement with edge loops. So I want 4 rows of vents. Bevel the vertical edge loops to create space. Select Inset Single Poly and Alt-click on the polys you want to inset. Click and hold Ctrl to match the rectangle shape we have. Next we want to extrude an edge. So in Edge Action, click Q-Mesh. Make sure you click Do Nothing in the Polygon action so we can use the polygons to control our edge extrusion better. When hovering over a poly, you will see an orange line. Make sure that is pointing to the edge you want to extrude and drag out. Click to repeat. Now press Ctrl W for one polygroup and rotate to the bottom. In the tool palette under polygroups, click Group Front. That will polygroup the bottom and the polys under the vents. Now we can select everything except the bottom of the vents and delete them. Also, delete the holes that were not vents. Rotate to the side and position the vents better. Now we can extrude inward to give thickness. I chose extrude instead of Q-Mesh because I didn't want any of the close polygroups bridging together. Flip to normals when finished. If you need more thickness, you can switch to Polygroup All, and just like with Q-Mesh, holding Shift will put you into a move operation. Crease PG and turn on dynamic to see what you have. For the next part, we need to use the Slice Curve brush. The Zmodeler's insert edge loops won't cut it here because of the holes. Slice down near the edges of the vents to hold its shape. Finally, we are going to crease a single edge on each corner of the vent to help support the form. Just make sure you do all your vents at once per subtool, because once you extrude the polys and have that thickness, it is a lot of trouble to go back and add more in. So I went back and finished the vents, added some bolts and small pieces, added the wheel drive that is made of cylinders and the use of extender, which we already covered, mask out the engine housing and bring in a cylinder 3D. Split mask points and scale the cylinder in. This will be the base of the intake. Mask out the base and move the gizmo up. Bring in a sphere 3D. Move the bottom cone up until it's at 50. Increase the total size and scale it down vertically. Mask off the top half and control move with the gizmo to extrude. Remove the bottom with polygon action of delete and a target of flat island. Select the base and pull out a poly strip. Turn on dynamic and use edge loop this time instead of the crease level. When on the same subtool, sometimes you need a different fall off for the edges. It is better to use edge loops to control that. Otherwise, you can use dynamic with crease levels for consistent roundness of the edges. For the top cover, turn on dynamic. And add edge loops to control the roundness. At the top of the cover, weld the points. Then Q-mesh all polygons. In the tool palette, open up a new tool. Go to the gizmo and bring in a polyplane. Change the Y divides to 50 and the X divides to 100. Scale the plane in the X direction until you hit 2 at the bottom, while holding Shift to snap it. Change the poly action to Insert Point. Now, you can insert each point individually, or you can Alt-click each one, which is still not an effective method. So instead, since Alt-clicking creates a white polygroup, let's click Group as Dynamesh Sub located in the Polygroup subpalette, which will make the entire mesh a white polygroup. Now you can insert points in all the polys with just one click. Next is to click Merge Tries located in the Modify Topology subpalette. This will make the edge direction diagonal. Switch to Slice Curve to create a nice edge. Now we can select Inset in the Polygon action, all polygons as the target, and Border only for the modifiers. Then delete the edges on the border of the mesh. Q-mesh all polygons to give it some thickness. Crease PG and turn on dynamic. That will give us circles in the middle, which is cool, but not what we want. All you have to do is turn on Q-Grid and adjust the coverage, and a shape will start to appear. Next is to make this plane a cylinder shape. Bring up the gizmo and click on Bend Arc. Go to the top view and move the cone until the angle is 180. The white cone will adjust the radius. Go back to the gear and press Accept. Navigate back to the Road Grader tool, and this time instead of Append, click Insert and select the wire mesh. The difference between Append and Insert is Append will throw the model at the bottom of the subtool list. Insert will place it right below the selected subtool, which is useful when subtools and folders start adding up. Scale and position the wire mesh in place. Then we can slice and delete the excess. The hose clamp is a small piece, but it's a fun one, and I wanted to share how I made it with everybody. Grab a polycube from the gizmo and delete the loops. Scale it in. And add one edge loop going vertical and one going horizontal. Split the point in the front and the back. Q-mesh polygroup all and remove the edge loop left behind. Bring up the gizmo and click on Extender. Extend it out and press Accept. Crease the edges and turn on Dynamic. Polygroup the flat island on both sides. Then go to Array Mesh. Change the repeats to 30. Click Lock Position, Lock Size, and Transpose. Then press Y to switch to the Transpose line. Click inside the middle circle on the transpose line and move the instances out. Adjust the mesh until they are touching. Make sure Extrude is on and click Make Mesh. Turn on Dynamic and adjust the weld distance until all the verts from the array are merged. Crease the edges and center the gizmo in the middle. Go to the gear and click Bend Arc. Set the angle to 180 and adjust the radius. Press Accept and weld the remaining points. With smooth subdivisions at 4 and crease level at 3, you could tell the poles at the edges are causing shading issues. To fix it, Q-mesh the poly loop to remove the poles on the edges. Bring up the gizmo and select Twist. Hold down Shift and set it to 5. Press Accept to lock it in. Mask the mesh and add in a polycube. Split mask points and delete loops. Once scaled and in position, add a few edge loops. Bring up the gizmo and click Bend Arc. Bend it backwards until it matches the radius of the clamp. Press Accept when finished. Scale it vertically and add an edge loop at the top and the bottom with slice curve. Alt-click the interior poly loop and Q-mesh out. Mask the mesh again and bring in a cylinder 3D. Split mask points and scale it down. Crease and turn on dynamic. Grab fastener 23 from the IMM model kit . Move the screw out and mask everything except the back of the screw. Move it out and position it. Bevel the end of the cylinder . Merge the subtools down and go back to the road grader tool. Insert the clamp into the tool, position and scale it into place. Even though this is a very small piece and will barely be seen in any of the renders, it still needs to be added. Maybe 1 or 2 people will notice it, but if it's not there, a whole lot more people will have a feeling something is missing. Also, for a small piece like this that's hardly noticeable, I will try to model without reference. If it's giving me trouble, or is halfway visible, I will grab a few images to model from. Okay, last piece for part 2. Click on a new tool and grab a cylinder 3D from the gizmo. Scale it in the Z direction and crease the edges with dynamic on. Apply the dynamic subdivisions and delete the lower subdivision levels in the geometry subpalette. Now use Dynamesh Master and set the poly count to around 1,000,000. If you don't have Dynamesh Master, you could download it at the Pixelogic website. Select Mask Circle and turn on Symmetry. Change the symmetry to Z and turn on radial symmetry as well with a radial count of 8. Control drag out the circle mask at the ends. Canvas rotate until the unmasked space is at the top. Drag out another circle mask and mask out the back with Mask Pen. Just a reminder, you're not seeing me change between masking brushes because I'm using the Genie voice commands. Bring up the gizmo and pull out the unmasked section. Center the gizmo and scale in. Run a polish to soften the edges. Polish is located in the tool palette under the deformation subpalette. Then control drag in an empty space on the canvas to redynamesh the model. Hold down Shift and change the weighted smooth mode to 1. That is located in the brush palette under the smooth brush modifier subpalette all the way toward the bottom. Turn up the radial count and grab the standard brush. We're going to do a little bit of sculpting. Mirror weld on the X and the Y. Delete the back half of it. Run a polish by features a few times to clean up the open border. The smoother the border, the better the Zremesher will work. Also, if a piece is symmetrical, turn on symmetry before running Zremesher. Or you can delete by symmetry, located in the modified topology subpalette. Run the default setting for Zremesher. Then click on half and change the adaptive size to about 20. Run Zremesher a few more times until you get the topology you want. Then mirror and weld in the X and the Y. Q-mesh all polygons to get thickness. Flip the normals. Then use Zmodeler's transpose polygroup island. Move it out and clip it to a flat surface. Delete the back and mask out everything except the open border. Run a polish by features to space out those points. Use Zmodeler to close the back. Crease PG and turn on dynamic. Turn radial symmetry back on and change the count to 8. Bring up the IMM model kit and grab fastener 15. Drag it out and split mass points. Before inserting the last bolt in the middle, we can clean up the topology with Zmodeler. Delete the middle and close it up. You can flatten the surface by using a gizmo. Control move to extrude and scale inwards. Now you can insert the final bolt. Merge down the subtools and you're ready to append it back into the road grader tool. That does it for this video. Hope to see you in part 3.